people see me come in, if anything in the meeting says equity, for Anglo men, there's this level of anxiety. Okay, here we go again. But when I go in and I ask, "Do you want these 3 words in your life?"
Mhm.
I share, we're not here to go down blame town.
Mhm.
You could see like the walls coming down. And so with R.A.I, we create a space for people from all backgrounds, all experiences, all different perspectives to have a conversation.
I just had the pleasure of interviewing and having a great conversation with Jimmy Hart, who is a 31-year educator who left education and has created a program that I believe that all people, all industries uh, would embrace. The program is called R.A.I, and it's an acronym that stands for Respect, Affirmation, and Inclusion. And as he was discussing R.A.I, not only is it something that we could implement into any of our industries with any of our organizations, our employees, but it would solve for so much of what's going on in our world. I think it would, and I don't think, I truly believe it would bring unity, not only to our family structures, but also to our corporate structures as well as educational structures. So please enjoy this time with him. It's not so often that I get a educator who has a passion to truly change our next generation. He is genuine. He is kind. He is the leader that we need for today. And not only just for our students, but also for our adult population as we go into many different areas of our workforce. To address what he's trying to address would only make all of us better.
You obviously have just told me that you've dedicated over 3 decades in education, leadership, and empowering others.
Yes.
What early experiences shaped your passion for fostering respect, affirmation, and inclusion in the communities that you serve?
Yes, I appreciate you asking that question. And all of this, I always have to go back to my early childhood, growing up in desegregation here in Southern Arizona. But when I moved to Oklahoma, I saw something totally different. I graduated from Langston University, which is a historical Black college and university.
Yes.
My first teaching job was at a school district called Millwood Public Schools in Oklahoma. 100% African American. I had never seen anything like that before, coming from Arizona. And I had some great mentors during that process. 2 principals, the superintendent, they just continued to sow into me as a young man. And when they didn't feel I was going in the right direction, they steered me in the right direction. Simultaneously, I became friends with a gentleman named Clifton Talbert, who became my mentor. And he's the first one who introduced me to this idea of respect, affirmation, and inclusion, R.A.I, as we call it. And he's since passed that down to me. But it's those early years where I had this plethora of, for me, African American men who sold into me, 1,000 miles away from home, and they would be near my father. These men sold into me. They treated me with respect and dignity constantly. They always affirmed my work if I did a good job, all the time. And they always included me in everything that they were doing. And so that set the tone for me as a young educator, my first 5 years in education. And we know those first 5 years, especially now, post COVID, if you will, those first 5 years are the most critical for a teacher working in education today. And so they made sure I stayed the course, uh, sewed into me. And now what I do is I travel, I train on this idea of respect, affirmation, and inclusion, and sewing into other educators, sewing into other leaders, and proving that there's a better way to do business. When I became a teacher, what I heard the first week by a teacher is, you don't smile till Christmas or the holiday. And we know that doesn't work for anybody. It creates a sense of trauma. It creates stress for students. And so there's just a much better way to do education nowadays. So that's what made me who I am today, and for who I am as an educator, and the work I do with R.A.I.
How do you think those experiences transformed the students that you touched for 31 years? What happened to you? Obviously, I was talking to another guest on my podcast yesterday, and we said childhood affects everything of who we are. But even in your young adulthood of being mentored that way, how did you help students? I'm sure you affirmed them, but what did you see, and what's the direct effect that you saw on the students?
So those three words, respect, affirm, include. At the center, I share with people, imagine those three words as a triangle, a R at one point, an A and an I at another point, and the
Mhm,
middle is belonging.
mhm,
So I learned to create this sense of belonging for my students, also serving as a mentor, as a positive male role model. Many of the students I'm still in contact with today. We interact on LinkedIn. We interact on Facebook. We interact through email. If I need them to speak for me to other students, they're willing to speak to me. And these are individuals who have started tech companies, past NFL, first round draft picks, working at universities. So the impact was great. The big piece of that is establishing strong relationships with students, and I think that's a piece that we don't talk about enough in our education world. The importance of relationships. We spend so much time in K-12 education with implementing the latest product. Are we implementing it with fidelity? Or what is the latest process? Are we using the process to discipline the student? But we don't spend as much time developing the people. And so
mhm,
through those who mentored me, that's something I learned. Let's develop the people. Let's spend time with the people. Let's ask them how they're doing. Let's find out who they are, why they are. So that's been the impact, and still having relationships with kids who were in the very first class, first and second classes I taught back in 93, 94.
When you think about what is going on in the world with our students, do you believe that is that they don't feel a lack of respect? They don't feel that, like you said, we don't pay attention to that. We're mostly looking at, the test scores. We're trying to, the academic focus. I even think as a parent, sometimes I can get overly into the homework, but where's the heart of my child? How much time did I spend on the heart of my child this week versus did you do your homework? What grade did you get? How many tests do you have? What do you think? Do you think that's part of a solution as we go forward in what's going on in our nation and with the generations we're talking about? And I'm talking about every child, not just African American children, but every child.
Yes, yes. Um, you said a word, heart, and I believe that's a piece that we don't tap into enough in our world of K-12 education. Respect is a big topic. It's a big issue within our schools. Sometimes more is caught than taught, and what I mean by that,
Mhm.
if on average 50% 7% of people who are going to work each day are feeling a lack of respect, we can imagine how that's being trickled down to the students.
Yes.
Teachers
Yes.
may not talk about it, but like as parents, there's things that I would talk to my kids about when they were young, but then they would pick up something that I modeled. So the more the more that we can teach on this idea and practice and model this idea of respect, the better. We know our teachers are leaving. Now that the timeline is even shorter, 2 years. I've seen where teachers are walking out. First year teachers, they're walking out with their baskets and bags halfway through the year, and it's because they're missing a lack of respect, whether it be from their cohorts, feeling a lack of respect from administration, or even the reality of feeling a lack of respect from students at times. So
Yes.
I do believe respect is extremely important in our schools, and it needs to be taught. I'm grateful for those schools who are teaching respect. I have the opportunity to go into elementary, middle school, and high schools. I've got elementary. Middle school. I'm going into tomorrow. I was in some elementaries last week, and what's amazing at the elementary level, kids, I'd say most kids are so eager to learn how to be respectful, to learn how to be affirming, to learn how to be inclusive. It just comes out of them. It's who they are.
Yes.
Something happens along the way. They hit fifth, sixth grade, and then junior high, middle school, it totally shifts.
Yes.
So I think it talks to the fact that we need to do more and continue teaching on these ideas of respect, affirmation, and inclusion, developing individuals' characters. Middle school, junior high is where students really shift in terms of their identity based on the experiences that they have had. Whether they're going to continue school, or they're going to drop out, or they're going to decide to become the bully because they've been bullied. So I do believe we need to put a lot more emphasis on respect, and like timeless principles. I am working on a book right now. I don't
Mhm.
have the title formalized, but the idea is preventing adverse classroom experiences, and respect falls into that equation.
Mhm.
So many times when we talk about ACEs, it's historically been talked about in terms of what is happening to a student in their home,
Yes.
outside of the school, or what's happening in the student's community. But we don't have the conversation enough about what's happening to the student at school. And this is where R.A.I comes into play, being respectful, affirming, and inclusive. One of my big pushes is looking at how all students and helping schools identify ways to ensure all students are feeling that they are not just that they feel, but that they know they are part of the school.
Mhm.
How are they identified within the curriculum? How
So
are
what backing up a little bit, what is the process in making sure there's a connection in the school? Going back to even, the best test here is me raising my own kids who's 18 and 22, but I thought about how as a parent, I worked behind the scenes to make sure that their gifts and talents were connected within the school atmosphere or the school culture, right? So if I found that my daughter was a great writer and she was great at editing, then, the school newspaper and becoming a leader going in that direction. So what processes are you using? Because I think the home life would have to, you would have to address the home life and address the parents as well as making sure the school is connecting them, or do you have a system where you are actually understanding that student and how to connect them, individually connect them according to the God-given gifts and talents that they have?
Yeah, that's that sense of belonging, feeling a part of the school community. And
Mhm.
yes, definitely parents have a big part to play in that. The community have a big part to play. I believe some of the challenges, so many of our students, those who deserve the extra supports and services, don't always have the home structure or the parent support or even the
Mhm.
community support, and
Mhm.
that's where I believe schools have to step up and do more. We have set curriculums across the United States, set state standards that have to be taught, but there's nothing in there that says we can't focus on timeless principles that we all want as human beings.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
believe that's where schools can do better at teaching and continue to teach timeless principles. And actually we reward students for implementing those timeless principles. There are systems in place. You probably remember when your kids are, it happens most of the time elementary, positive
Mhm.
behavior intervention supports and systems where kids, they can get points or they get a ticket based on the name of the mascot at their school and they can cash it in. But we have to have these conversations more often, and we have to continue the conversations at the elementary level. A lot of kids are at most schools, I believe, they're in one classroom. So teachers have that opportunity to establish those strong relationships to get to know the students. Students get to be student of the week.
Right.
There's something special gets to happen to that student. So they're feeling affirmation, they're feeling included, if not throughout the year for that 1 week. We don't do those things as often at the junior high and middle school level, and definitely not at the high school level. And then at the junior high, high school level, we start seeing the division in terms of grouping and where
Right.
groups you with, and the quote unquote food chain of who's popular, who's not popular. And I
Right.
believe we have a great opportunity to continue what we've been doing at the elementary level, primarily the younger grades, continue those processes at the junior high and high school level. And the reason I say that because again, 57% of people around the country, based on different research studies, one in particular, the Pew research study, people leave the workplace because of a lack of respect. So we've got something we're not doing to promote respect on a consistent basis within our schools and within our community and then within the workplace. So
Mhm.
there's great opportunity there. I
Oh,
just
that's
want to throw out
great.
one more example. Just to show you how kids they group. I did a workshop at a junior high, and we did a nurturing circle um, with all the students, about 50 students. They literally broke up. I thought I was at a basketball game or NBA game, split up between teams. All the girls were on one side and all the boys were on one side. It was just interesting how
Right.
they grouped.
Right.
By
Right.
default, they grouped, and then within the group, there was softball girls, the soccer girls, the volleyball
Yeah.
girls, and the
Yes.
school with the
Yeah.
boys. So they grouped according to gender, but then they grouped according to
To
their
their interests and
yeah.
activities. Yes. Yes. Oh my goodness, that reminds me of my son's culture right now. He's 18, so that sounds very familiar. But and how and let me ask you this, you piloted a program that successfully recruited underserved students into advanced placement courses.
Yes.
What challenges did you face and what impact did this initiative have on students and the broader community? What fell out of this? What learnings, what were the takeaways?
Uh, Thanks for bringing up the pilot. So what we did one year, we reached out to 10 high school students at a particular high school.
Uh-huh.
And as you say, in this case, it was to give opportunity to students who are historically marginalized.
Mhm.
What we learned is that students were being placed in these AP classes based on being like the teachers, based on the teachers having conversations with them. And it was a referral system, if you will, at the time. So if I don't have the same interest as you as a teacher, or we don't talk when I coming out to class, I'm left out of I'm left out of the equation. I'm excluded. I'm not included.
Mhm.
So what we
Mhm.
did with the pilot, we identified 10 students whose grades, um, academic record, state assessments were apples to apples to Anglo cohort of students, and went to the administration and said, "Hey, look, these kids, they're identical. Let's give them the same opportunity to take an AP class." And I say 10 students because we started out with 11. So some of the challenges I say for families and parents who are not familiar with the opportunities that advanced placement courses can bring for students in terms of, passing with a certain level on the AP exam, they get college credit for it, or just a boost in GPA to help with scholarships, small scholarships. So that was some of the challenges. We had one parent that just refused because they were worried about their child failing. It was new. The initial challenge was proving that this group of marginalized students were just as capable of the students who were getting the opportunity to take the course.
Yes.
And what came out of it, eight, eight of the students got B's and A's,
Mhm.
and the other one or two students they did okay, they passed the class. So our theory was true in that apples to apples with grades, state assessments, and academic achievements, marginalized students can achieve in advanced placement classes. The outcome of that, the district ultimately put in place an advanced learning experiences department, where there's still a director in that department today, and we've seen an increase in the percentage year over year of the number of students who are taking advanced placement classes who traditionally or historically would not take advanced placement classes. And it's interesting you bring this topic up because I was just reflecting earlier this week on the fact that when I was in high school, I had friends who didn't look like me.
Mhm.
We went to football practice together. We hung out at lunch. We hung out before school, but I never saw them in class. And so what we finally realized is they were taking AP classes and the rest weren't taking AP classes, even though we were good students. And so at the time, my high school had a high school within a high school. And fast forward, because of my lived experiences being an educator, I was able to make sure my daughter had the opportunity to attend that high school. And I did my work as a district administrator to increase the number of marginalized students getting into that high school. Um, but yeah, that was a very interesting experience. The work has to continue
Yes.
because kids are capable, and this is the other place where I believe schools uh, can do more and should do more in terms of developing the people and spending time getting to know the students. Because oftentimes we have kids who, uh, especially students who are historically marginalized, that they may be distracted or considered disruption in class, but they're really smart. Just teachers don't know anything about the students.
Well, it's funny that you say that. My mom spent a lifetime in education, and she always said that. She said some of my smartest students were the ones who did not come from the resources, the background, the culture, the environment that bred, academic excellence, right? And so, um, I really like the pilot program that you ran because even my own son has said, he's an athlete. He's played in many different circles, different walks of life of all different kinds of students and has friends from all walks of life. And one thing he says is that, I know so and so is smarter than me. Um, However, they don't go to the school that I go to or have the resources that I have. And so he even has a passion and a burning um, to, invest back into communities once he gets older, right? And I just find it interesting that you ran that pilot program. Where are you taking it from now? What are your plans? What's the growth of that? Because I do believe it starts at a grassroots level, but with the findings that you have, that is something that every school district should be rolling out immediately.
I do have the opportunity to share this work with other schools and other school districts. Within the R.A.I framework, we always start off talking about R.A.I and working on R.A.I with teachers first. And then we trickle it down to the students, and we involve community, parents, civic groups, faith-based, et cetera, so that they know what's happening within the school. But when we're talking with teachers, uh, one, with R.A.I, what we've learned, it doesn't matter if you're 5, 45, or 85. We all want to be respected. We all want to be
Mhm,
affirmed, and
mhm.
we all want to be included. It's just a part of our human nature to have those three things. And once I'm able to get a school to really lock in on that idea and those three words, then we can start having a conversation. What does respect look like for all the students within your community? What does affirmation look like for all the students in your community? What does inclusion look like for all the students in your community? Is when we start talking about advanced placement courses and opportunities. That's when we start having a conversation and can have a conversation. Okay, this is your AP enrollment. Is this inclusive of all the students that you're serving within your school community? And who's left out of this equation? So Ray gives us this opportunity to um, without being real harsh about what may not be happening in the school system. But by leveraging Ray, we can start asking questions about areas that could be addressed or improved within the school system. So, and I haven't, been going in schools and talking on the AP piece as much, but I do need to get back to that, and I appreciate you bringing that up because that's an opportunity where students can feel a sense of belonging, having an opportunity to take those advanced placement courses.
So give me actually, uh, sequentially, what are the practical steps that leaders can take to embed the RAIF framework into their organizational culture? And RAI, again, for our listeners, stands for Respect, Affirmation, and Inclusion, which is a framework you have created um, from being an educator for 31 years. So what practical steps can leaders take to embed that framework, the RAI framework, into their organizational culture?
To embed the framework, for one, they can give me a call and get me on their calendar. um, but really, it's just starting to have that conversation,
Mhm,
slowing down, taking the time to get to know the people.
mhm,
As a school leader, taking the time to get
mhm.
to know your staff. So much changed for me when I was a principal, for the better, when I slowed down to get to know my staff, to really take interest in my staff.
What
Uh,
keeps principals from not slowing down? What pressures are they feeling? So, I know test scores is one thing that causes them to, feel a certain amount of intense pressure. What are some things that would cause them not to slow down that you can, encourage them in, "No, slow down anyway, because this is more important. This is the foundation of a healthy school,
just
of you producing healthy students that can go on and do great things."
the number one strategy that I believe school leaders can practice, even superintendents, getting out of the district office. But the number one strategy is to get up out of that office seat and spend at least half the day in classrooms. You see so much. If principals do that, and that's what was told to me my first year as a principal. I did
Yes,
it as assistant principal because everything wasn't coming to me, everything wasn't on my desk, so I moved about a lot. But
yes.
as a principal, you have to be intentional. That's the number one thing you can do if you wanna promote this idea of rate, because what happens is, you expect what you inspect, and by getting out into those classrooms, you're seeing your teachers. Your teachers know that you care about what's happening. Teachers care. They wanna know that they're doing a good job. That goes back to that of affirmation. They wanna know that you value what they're doing, that you're an integral part of their school community. And so by getting up out of that seat and spending at least half a day in the classrooms, you create a climate and an expectation that people know you're gonna be in classrooms. And when you do that, things slow down. But if you stay in your office and you're not moving, People are coming to you and they're bringing you every problem and complaint and small problem that you could probably solve on your own to your office. And it gets easy as an
Yes.
administrator to get caught up in uh, trying to solve everyone's small problem or jump at everything that may look like an emergency. But you can
Ye
alleviate a lot of that by going into the classrooms, because what are you gonna see when you go in those classrooms? You're gonna see student-to-student interaction, you're gonna see teacher-to-student interaction, you're gonna see teacher-to-teacher interaction. You can
Mhm.
monitor, are my staff being respectful of each other and the students we serve? Am I seeing any accolades or affirmations happening within the classrooms? Are all
Yes.
of the students in this particular teacher's classroom being included in the learning process? I've been in classrooms when I used to do observations. I would chart out the class and I'd have circles for males, triangles for females. And at
Uh-huh.
times I would even break down the demographic by ethnicity. And I could show a teacher, hey, look, you spend a whole lot of time just talking to this three group of students. These other 25, 26 students you had no conversation with. So by being visible in a classroom, you can begin to model the behavior that you want on your campus. But you got to get out of
Mhm.
that seat more than half the day visiting classrooms.
Yes.
You can also see where students are being disrespectful of each other.
Yes.
You can see where teachers may be being disrespectful of each other. You will see when teachers are being disrespectful of students. And this goes back to this idea that I've been researching recently, is this idea of adverse classroom experiences. A lot of times the school creates these adverse experiences, whether
Yes.
unintentionally or unintentionally, for students. And as adults, we have the knowledge and insights, and the dendrites in our brain have been developed. So, we know how to navigate these areas, but our students don't know how to navigate these different areas being called out in class, being singled out in class, being part of a sarcastic, humiliating joke in class. And so by getting out of your seat as an administrator, at least half the day, you can help model, and you can talk on these things in pre-evaluation and evaluation meetings. And
Yes.
then also just bringing in professional development. One of the best things that administrators can do is bring in experts in this area to provide professional development. And I believe it has to be ongoing, can't be just a one-off. Tanque Verde School District is a small school district here in Arizona. Their entire district has implemented the R.A.I framework to the point where their governing board took it among themselves to adopt R.A.I as part of their long-term strategic plan. So when you go
Mhm.
out to their website, the very first page, you scroll down, you're going to see their mission, vision, and their guiding values. And one of them is R.A.I, and it talks about how we live this out. So I also believe putting policy into place and making it visible within policy that this is how we function on campus. Something schools can do is workshops with students, give students the opportunity to talk about what does or what should R.A.I look like on our campus, and what
Mm.
we do differently.
So the student involvement in race. So there's an opening for student. I probably missed that when you said it earlier, but there's an opportunity for student leadership within Ray, the Ray framework being implemented at
Yes,
a school.
yes, student
Okay.
leadership, student athletes. I've taken student athlete groups through
Mhm.
R.A.I. Right now,
Mhm.
I'm working as low as elementary student council and leadership groups.
Mhm.
This particular
Mhm.
school district in Tucson, who's adopted it district wide. Their fourth through sixth graders are talking about R.A.I on a monthly basis,
Wonderful.
and they are serving as mentors for the kinder through third grade students.
Mhm.
It's amazing when we give teachers the opportunity to tap into something like timeless principles that they can apply and they can understand on a daily basis. It's amazing what comes out of it. So what one of their schools in the district are doing is they've created um, um, stuffed animals to practice these timeless principles of being respectful, affirming, and inclusive. So, for example, respectful raccoon is an opportunity for students to practice and lead with this idea of R.A.I. We have schools where
Right.
they'll create posters that are put around campus to just remind students of how we act on campus. Student athlete groups at the high school level, bringing them together to serve as not just student athletes, but student athlete leaders on campus, and giving them the opportunity to have discussions around this idea of R.A.I. Something I haven't shared yet is, so R.A.I is our overarching umbrella. We start with R.A.I. We build community around R.A.I, but then we have 8 additional timeless principles and habits to live out R.A.I, and they are nurturing attitude, responsibility, dependability, friendship, brotherhood, sisterhood, high expectations, courage, and hope. So when we go in schools and we do this year-long training, we start off always with building community, because you have to know something about the people you're working with. And then we go into this idea of R.A.I, and then we have conversation around these 8 habits. And I want to back up. My mentor, Clifton Talbert, coined the phrase R.A.I, and he passed it on to me to implement how I see fit. He wrote a book back in 2007 called the 8 Habits of the Heart for Educators. Uh,
Right.
the book before that was 8 Habits of the Heart. And within that book, he talks on R.A.I, and it's sprinkled throughout. And so my work with him over the last 20, 25 years, I saw an opportunity to pull R.A.I to the forefront, make that the priority, and we use the 8 habits to live out R.A.I.
You know, I'm thinking about R.A.I, again, for our listeners, R.A.I stands for Respect, Affirmation, and Inclusion, which is a program of which Jimmy Hart has created and implemented into school districts and schools. But, you know, I think of R.A.I, and the whole time I'm thinking also, which is my background, is corporate business, right? And I think about how R.A.I is so needed even among adults. And I don't know if you have plans to change the language and maybe change a little bit, but I could see R.A.I as being something that's very widespread. As you know, DE&I is not the acronym for today. So they're having to really focus in on, you know, different kinds of ways to communicate that we still that everyone still understands the importance of inclusivity in diversity and equity. Oftentimes they're looking at, you know, more of a global focus, which is, I think, is very, um, I think it's very, what I'm saying, it's very appropriate for today's time, right? But R.A.I has a very special, unique kind of uh, foundation that actually could go into other industries.
Yes, you're right. So I work with city municipal groups. I've done stuff for HR organizations.
Yes, yes.
I just did a leadership, uh, did some speaking at a leadership retreat. I did some speaking at a leadership retreat for University of Arizona College of Humanities because the dean of the college wanted all of the directors and department heads to participate in leadership training. As scholars, they know their content, but
Right.
often do we talk about being leaders and in that equation of leadership, not necessarily implementing a process, but focusing on how the people function and act. So yes, you're absolutely right, Lisa. This can be used all over because
Yes.
the 3 words are 3 words we all want. And what we've learned in this work, and you hit on the topic of DEI, you're absolutely right. I'm able to go into organizations and ask the question, do you want your organization to be respectful? Do you want the people to be respectful? Do you want
I do.
affirmation to flow? And do you want to create environments where people are collaborative and inclusive? And they all said
Well,
yes.
those of course they do, and those 3 words actually, if you do those 3 words within an organization, what falls out of it is DE&I,
Exactly.
okay?
You're
And
100% right.
yes, and that's one reason, my son actually is involved in a organization at his school called Inclusion Diversity Leadership Council, and, I love the faculty member who has created it and who heads it up because she really has, um, spoken to my heart that if we're inclusive, that takes care of all of it.
Takes care of all of it.
It takes care of all of it.
Yeah.
And so then you don't focus on one gender, one race,
Don't.
one culture. Then this becomes a win for all people. And I think that's the approach we're going to have to focus in on um in this new climate that we're in, right? So that we still are I think that we never were not focused on all people, but, and that wasn't the definition of D&I wasn't for one race, one gender, one culture. It never was. But to better understand it and define it, I think programs like Ray, as well as focusing just on inclusivity, what falls out of it is exactly the things that we've been trying to address for years, right? So
You're 100% right, Lisa. And this is why I share with people the triangle. Imagine Ray each letter at a point of a triangle.
yes,
And if organizations are practicing those 3 words, you can put a big B in the center for belonging because belonging is a big part of the conversation. I'm gonna feel a sense of belonging if I know I'm being respected, if I feel and going beyond feel. So there's tangible things we can do to practice Ray. But if I feel and know I'm respected, I feel and know I'm affirmed, I feel and know I'm included, I have a strong sense of belonging. And what we've learned with R.A.I and why we're able to go into schools and do training in uh, corporate environments or do training in, I'm doing some work here with the local city government in terms of their equity initiatives or going to higher education is because with R.A.I, people understand those three words.
Yes.
The other piece about R.A.I is that there are three actionable words. I have to do something to be respectful. I have to do
Yes.
something to be affirming. I have to do something to be inclusive. And it can be measured. We're not just talking about it conceptually. It's an act. And on the receiving end, I have to put my hand out as well to receive respect, to receive affirmation, and to receive being a part of a team or an organization or willingness to be included, a part of a corporate event. So they're actionable words. And what we've learned in some of the school district work is that people have perspectives from one end to the other.
Y-
And what this work does, it helps alleviate having to always fight around different ideologies and perspectives.
Yes.
If we can live here in this lane and we can start the conversation here, and what I found in this work, I'm just going to go there. When I go into organizations and I do this work, more so, well, K-12 and outside of the K-12 environment, people see me come in. If anything in the meeting says equity for Anglo men, there's this level of anxiety. Okay, here we go again. But when I go in and I ask, "Do you want these three words in your life?"
Mhm.
I share, we're not here to go down blame town.
Mhm.
You could see like the walls coming down. And so with R.A.I, we create a space for people from all backgrounds, all experiences, all different perspectives to have a conversation.
If changing an acronym and changing our vocabulary in order to get to the same result, that is something I'm willing to do, right? And because if we're not understanding it the way it was, so that we can include all people and get everyone on the same page, then we change the vocabulary, we change the communication flow, we change what needs to be dialogued, right? In order to get everyone flowing in the same direction and understand that you also win from this.
Yes.
Everybody will win from this.
Everyone wins. And
Everyone wins.
that's a
Yes.
great space to be because there's opportunity for everyone to win. There's room for everyone.
Mhm.
You're absolutely right. And that's what R.A.I brings to the table. Uh,
Mhm.
that's why I always give credit to my mentor who has passed it down to me
Mhm.
because it was definitely a gift
Mhm.
that he's passed down. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, allows for us to have a safe conversation
Mhm.
and it established the framework up front. There's no hidden agenda.
Yes.
There's no hidden agenda. The one of the most conservative school districts here in my community adopted this framework district wide
Mhm.
because they see there's no hidden agenda with this. It's truly uh, getting everyone to where we want to be and go, and that's just we all want to be respected, we all want to be affirmed, we all want to be included.
That's right.
Let's start the conversation there, and then we have these 8 habits of how we practice it. We spend a lot of time on courage because you have to have some courageous conversations.
Yes, go through the habits quickly with
Yeah,
me.
so
Yes, that would be
habits,
great.
the habits, nurturing attitude,
Uh-huh.
within the school framework or in a work or in a corporate, environment, or if you're a leader, how are
Mhm.
you nurturing your students? How are you nurturing your team? Yeah, that
Mhm.
falls into that affirmation component.
Yes.
What does it look like for you to be nurtured? And we do
Yes.
some cool, activities to help people remind why the habit of nurturing is so important and valued. The second habit, responsibility. Okay, if you're gonna practice R.A.I, you've gotta be responsible. You have tasks to do. You have time commitments to meet. If you're not meeting those, you're not being very respectful of the organization or
Yes.
your team or your committee. Dependability. Are you being dependable as a team member? And what does that look like for your students? How are you as a teacher, as an administrator? How are you being dependable for your teachers as a corporate
Mhm.
leader? How are you being dependable for your team?
Yes.
Friendship. So in schools, we talk about, you don't have to be best friends with students to be friends, but friendship is needed. We do
Yes.
better if we're around people we like, people we know. If you know nothing about me, you're afraid of me,
Mhm.
and there's no trust. And we know organizations grow at the speed of trust, so we practice the habit of friendship, and then we get into brotherhood, sisterhood. Practicing brotherhood, sisterhood is this idea of extending the table. Hey, let's
Mhm.
go to lunch. We don't listen to the same music. We don't go to the same type of church. We don't even have the same political beliefs, but we can go to lunch and we could break bread. So that's what brotherhood, sisterhood is about, is this idea of extending the table. And then
Mhm.
you have high expectations. So having high expectations is a firm of one, you believe that I'm capable. Because you believe I'm capable, you're including me in the process.
Mm.
So it's an inclusive practice. High expectations, believing that all students have the capability, believing that your son's friends, people he know that are smart, are getting the upper table. They're being brotherhood, sisterhood, and high expectations being practiced because someone is reaching out to this student who does not fit the traditional AP look.
Yes.
Then you have courage, and
Mhm.
that's where we have some really deep conversations. What does what does Ray look like for everyone in our organization?
Mm.
You know, what
That's
does
good.
affirmation look like for everyone in our organization? So I can in schools, I can begin having conversations about, the curriculum. How are your students included in the curriculum? If they never see themselves in from kindergarten to 12th grade, 13 years of education, they never see anything positive about themselves. How is that affirming on them? And now
Right.
you're expecting them to be something better that you're not showing them.
Right.
Then there's hope. The last one. Ray is all about hope. The future, prepare in terms of our students, preparing the future ambassadors of our society.
Yes.
The hope that they can continue and make our world a better place, as well as for new employees going into corporate and other organizations. So those are the 8 habits. So we start off with building a sense of community, and then once we build a sense of community and remind people it's okay to talk with each other and have
Yes.
conversations, then we go into Ray and what that looks like in practice. And then once we understand Ray, we then go into the 8 habits and we delve deep in our trainings. The way we implement the trainings, we always we want to look at the subject, the words, the topic, the meaning, but we look at an external example of the impact of that habit, and then we bring people together for dialogue. It may be group work, it may be an activity, and then we close out with a self reflection. So there's always time for self reflection, and we ask people to commit to one way they can implement, whether it be respect, affirm, include, or one of the habits. So that's an overview of Ray and the 8 habits and the work we do in schools and in corporate settings and higher education.
Oh, that's wonderful, Jimmy. I'm enjoying this so much, just for so many different reasons on so many different levels. And I believe it's people like you that are coming up with these kind of new programs to implement a form of unity,
Yes.
um, is imperative. And I just want to encourage you to continue to um, spread it through all industries. But you're starting at where it's important. You're starting with the student. You're starting with the next generation, which is very, very important. Let me ask you one final question. You faith and personal values. I know that faith is a part of your framework, and they play a significant role in your approach to leadership. How do you balance your personal beliefs with the need to create inclusive spaces for diverse communities?
It's daily practice. It's daily practice. So that's one of the ways. Just for me, in my introductions, I always put I'm a lifelong learner of Ray and the 8 habits.
Hmm.
So it's a daily reminder. But I'll share with you my best training ground is at home.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, in our works, generally when we go out in public, we put our best face forward.
Hmm.
Where the real work comes in is behind the scenes.
Yes,
So that's my training ground. Uh,
that's
and
great.
I share that with people, and oftentimes when I'm going through workshops, people talk about, I can use this at home, or can you share this with my husband? They'll joke about it and so on. But my training ground is at home. I have a about to be a 24-year-old who's in grad school, who still taps into my pockets, and
I know,
yeah,
yes, yes,
then I got one that's about to turn 20, who's in Virginia.
right.
She stretches my thought process constantly,
Oh my goodness. I have one
constantly.
of those too. I have one of those too. Yes.
So I have the opportunity to practice Ray and 8 habits at home.
I right
Or
here at home. Okay.
and I
Yes.
share, like, my mom when she calls me at the most inconvenient time.
Right.
Am I gonna practice Ray? You know?
Yes.
So
Yes.
so
It's a lifestyle. It's
yes,
a lifestyle,
lifestyle.
and the more you make it a lifestyle, the more that you can easily make that impact,
Yes, yes.
into our organizations, culture, educational systems, whatever. Yes, I get you. I get you. Well, I just wanna say thank you,
Thank you for
for
this.
being a guest, and, thank you for saying yes to coming on the podcast. Um, you have, inspired me to want to, practice R.A.I as well. I'm in that in between stage or the crossroads of learning to more than parenting, but learning to adulting with
Oh,
my
yes.
yes. And so R.A.I would be more. It's more important than ever.
It is.
Especially yes.
I can get
So
across the point if I practice Ray.
yes.
If I go into my traditional or how I grew up, it's
Right, or how what we've taught you, and here's how you've grown up. No, none of that.
no, no,
Yes,
not at all.
it falls on just deaf ears, doesn't
It
it?
does, yes.